All right, good morning, everybody. So today we are going to be talking about VARK, which stands for Visual, Oral, Reading and Writing, and Kinesthetic Learning. And we have our usual two crew of Stephen and Richard, and our special guest today is Donna and Greta. So I know, Donna, you've been on our podcast before. Greta, can you give us a little background, short background about yourself, so the viewers all know, who they're talking to?
Okay. Hi, I'm Greta Kishbaugh, and I'm a professor of business and management for about 12 years now. I teach at 3 different colleges. My full-time gig is here in St. Petersburg College, and I teach leadership and management, basically the management certificate. So anything that the students are doing to get this 4-credit management certificate. And I have had a little experience with second graders and middle schoolers. And right now, and the reason why I think Richard asked me to come on today is I'm getting ready to revamp all my online courses and really just make them more engaging for my students. I've been teaching online now. I taught online when online wasn't cool about 15 years ago. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and a lot more students are interested in learning more. So that's why I'm here today. And in my part-time, I'm a mentor for veteran startups and mentor Richard's in the Strive program. I help out with the Strive program at Hillsborough Community College. And I also do have a little marketing business on the side where I help people with websites and stuff. So I'm busy.
Awesome. Excellent. And Donna, just for fun, can you give a short background about yourself? You've been on the podcast before.
Just for fun. Okay.
Sarcasm alludes.
Public school reform influencer for the last 20 years. I would call myself now an educational consultant, specializing in social emotional learning. Mm-hmm. That looks mostly like working with leadership teams in schools, working with teachers in the classroom, and modeling particular strategies or ways to see the world in classrooms with spirited kids, which seems to be my specialty.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you both for being a part of the podcast this morning. And like I said, when we started, we were talking about V.A.R.K, and we were looking to maybe model our process of our education platform, a gaming platform for education after the V.A.R.K process. So the big question in the room, what Donna and Greta, how do you feel about V.A.R.K? And can we get a little deeper into that?
Sure. You want me to go first, Donna? Is that okay?
That works for me.
I think now I had the opportunity 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to actually teach business to students with an IQ of 70 or less. Okay, these were students who had Down syndrome, adults with attention deficit disorder or autism, and it was a business class because these were students going through a business program. And what an amazing experience. And I thought to myself at that time that they weren't any different than my regular, what we'd say, community college student, a regular student. I don't know what that means. I hope I'm using the right terminology. And when Richard talked about the Prefecture Academy, I want to see regular students who are not challenged need this. I think they really need, I think they would benefit from any type of visual learning. That's because they're not getting that. We briefly talked about this before we went live. The traditional textbook is not working anymore. So here, read chapter 1, take a quiz. My students want more, and my students are adults. They're between the ages of 24 and 48, and they want more. So I think this whole visual learning, this auditory, sensory, is for everybody. So I don't want to exclude students that are getting a regular college degree, because I think that this VARK method can be used for adult learners. I mean, imagine you're going back, most of my students are going back to school after being out of school for 20 to 30 years. And they need that. They need that sensory stuff. In my classrooms, I teach business, and my class, it's all experiential learning. We have markers and crayons. I bring out crayons and they laugh, okay? Pipe cleaners are the most popular thing in my classes now. These are adults, 48 years old, 50, some of them in their 60s. And they're like, I got to work with pipe cleaners. What are you doing to me? Okay. Right. And it's just, I think that's so important. So I know that you guys are more techie, and you're going to try to take the techie stuff to bring that out. I'm low tech. I'm like crayons and pencils, and Donna probably is too. You probably have that. I'm like dry erase board. I give everybody like a poster. We have this big pack of poster, and by the end of the 8-week class, they know exactly when they come into class to grab a marker, grab a piece of poster paper, and there you go. So Donna, how do you feel? There you go.
Beautiful. So it sounds like we have similar styles. I have lots of markers and big paper and lots of movement. You know, of course, I'm also working with adults, but it looks like moving about the room throughout the day, bringing music in or song, and just reconnecting the group before we sit down and do something a little more intellectual. I use all different aspects of learning. I know for myself, I don't like to sit and open the book to chapter 7 and like that's not horrible. That's where it's at. So I love to see teachers super excited and engaged with what we're doing and have their hands in it, literally, creating, you know, sparking ideas and whatever. I think the V.A.R.K, although it's new for me, is a great way. Any tool that allows self-awareness to come in is super valuable. So when I took the assessment, you know, I was looking at myself going, oh, so I'm really strong as a visual learner and kinesthetic learner, you know, like, so anything that sort of brings in more self-awareness is really beneficial, because the more self-aware I am, the more sort of grounded, the more sort of, you know, in tune with what we're doing I am, the more I'm tapped into myself, which connects me to other people. So that's how I see that tool as valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Richard and I have talked about this in depth. We talked about this in one of our first podcasts, you know, a certain degree, but how the learning experience works, you know, and you know, I can attest, I have three children. They're both all boys. You know, we have 20, 12, and 7. And the 20-year-old had traditional learning like I had, like we all had, you know, that's present on the podcast here. The 12-year-old and the 7-year-old, they now, I see specifically with math, visual type mathematical learning versus memorization. I'm seeing a lot more problem solving and creative problem solving skills being presented inside the curriculum, where I didn't see that as much in previous. To a certain degree, I find that very refreshing, because in business, I find that creative thinking is in a huge deficit right now. And there is a lot of the people that are being employed that have a creative thinking skill with them, really know how to succeed, really know how to look at things a lot differently. And I think that some of that comes from this new process. And I'm not going to say V.A.R.K is an atraditional process, because it does follow the traditional learning, you know, principles. But I think that there's a lot of things from what I've read that V.A.R.K does provide that will help move us into a different type of educational kind of structure. And I find that very refreshing, whether that is in a classroom or it's through something like, you know, what Richard and I are creating with Prefecture Go platform, using, you know, gamification to then teach certain principles and, you know, get someone ready on a career path. So I think that the question that I have, you know, now we've had, you know, a little, you know, piece with the V.A.R.K is the kinesthetic part That's the one that, that I've spent more time, trying to wrap my head around a little bit. So I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think about that specific element of this platform?
You mean the kinesthetic part, like introducing new touchy
Yeah.
feel? Yeah. I think here's a good. Now I have 9-year-old and 12-year-old, so you and I have to chat sometime. I'm having some issues. Maybe offline we can share some frustrations. But my 9-year-old is into sports,
Mhm.
and school does nothing for him except math. Okay, you guys bring this up, and I think it's like you said, the math now is more problem solving.
Mm.
It's more touching. They're doing the teachers, of course, he's in elementary school, so he has one teacher for math and science. So they've combined the curriculum, they've combined math and science together, and everything is touching. Everything is doing an experiment. They're doing so many experiments, I had no idea. So,
Mhm.
and that's at the elementary school. It's a public elementary school. We're lucky. We live in an area where we have a very good public school. But I think that whole idea that drives him, because he has to be out on the baseball field. He wants to play hockey. He's not
Mhm.
bad. Okay. So he's one of these kids that has to totally be touching and feeling and learning. English is doing nothing for him. Language arts, he could care less if he ever reads a book in his life. Okay. So my goal now has got to be, how do we use this kinetic, yeah, the word. I can't, I need more coffee. Okay. How do I get him now to read? So that's what I'm more concerned about. And I think your gaming platform is going to help the students like him, who maybe there's some, the language art part comes out of what
Mhm.
you guys are doing. That's what I'm looking forward to, is getting him excited about reading something other than Google.
Mhm.
Everything is Google. Everything is like, well, mommy, I just go to Google. Well, what about this National Geographic I have here? You want to look at that? And anyway, so I'm seeing a lot more experimentation in school. So we're very fortunate. So Donna, how about you? Sorry, I said I could talk forever.
I was, um, I would say about the language arts, I think that's been my experience with a lot of boys, especially. Don't want to label that, but
No,
that's
that's okay.
but it's like, how can we rethink education?
Mhm.
Like, take it out of the box, take it out of this factory mentality where you do, like you said, he goes to reading and then he goes to math, which he prefers, and then he goes to science. Like, what about rethinking education to say that's not how it actually works in the real world? We're
Mhm.
all adults, we all know that that's not how it actually works. So, the classrooms that I've also been a classroom teacher. Um, um, what I like to see and what I have seen successful is creating a project, which I think Stephen and Richard are creating with this, creating a project that kids get excited about, like building the city or saving the city, or, um, in my classrooms, we would work on like having, um, finding a friendship bench. Like, one of my classes
Mhm.
decided that kids that didn't have a friend on the playground, they thought putting a bench out that was a friendship bench that kids could go to when they needed a friend, was what they wanted to do. And so I was sort of the just the facilitator, the catalyst to help it move forward. But in this sort of entrepreneurial mindset, they brought a friendship bench to the school. And so when you take project-based learning, like what we're talking about, and kids get excited about it, they want to read a book because it's about whatever it is they're excited about. It's
Mhm.
about, saving the rainforest, which I did a lot in my third grade classroom. It's because the boys that didn't want to read, let's say, they were so excited about sharing the rainforest with the rest of the school and the community that their little noses were in a book going, okay, when we get to the canopy, I say, well, what are we going to say about the canopy when we get there? Yes. Their little noses were inside that book. And not because I was making them do it, not because they were supposed to do it, and not because it's a reading class, but because they were so darn excited about this project that was going to raise money for the rainforest.
Very
And
cool.
I think that's what Stephen and Richard have going here, is that kids get excited about a project, and then they have their nose in a book because they're excited.
They're
And
excited about it.
And that's true learning. That's what kids are looking for. That's where they thrive. And it's like, how can we create a platform like that?
Mhm. I'm going to take a hard right here for a second, and we'll bring it back to this conversation, but it's relevant, I promise. I literally just got off the phone with a client, and we were talking about loving what you do. You know, what do you do for a profession? You love what you do, and so it's such an important thing. I know as growing up, my parents always say, you know, make sure you choose a career that you're going to love what you're going to do. You love, you know, most days, not every day, but most days you love getting up, going and doing that task. You love creating or whatever that is. And, you know, most of the time my kids want to go to school. You know, the privilege of having some of these techniques already in their school that they go to. And most of the time, not all the time, they love going to school. And I love seeing that. Because how they learn is fundamentally how they perceive the world in their lens, to be able to love what they do, you know, to choose a career path that they want. And not every child or, you know, young adult or adult goes and says, yes, I want to be a dentist, or I want to be, you know, a graphic artist, or I want to be something that hasn't been created yet, you know. And so what I find important about the Prefecture Go platform, but also V.A.R.K specifically, is that it helps tune a person to start looking at what they like and finding that passion. And I remember talking the story about the rainforest and the creation, you know, a few podcasts ago, and it was a very enlightening story. And wanting to go and solve problems, you know, with what you do as a career, you know, and be able to help people, help humanity, help grow, but become, you know, self-fulfilling for yourself and feeling fulfilled is something that I think is hugely lacking in our world today. But I also think that through non-traditional learning practices, you know, which will eventually become traditional if they take hold, helps people understand that better. And I kind of see this little, I'll say, confusion the millennials have, for the best word, of whether they're on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence, because they're right in the middle. I see it with my 20-year-old. Technically, a millennial has a lot of some of the old ways, has some of the new ways, and I can see that competing as he does, you know, work, or as he goes throughout, you know, his normal life. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that how learning was, you know, given to him over the course of elementary, middle, and high school, and now in college, is fundamentally makes a person, how they perceive, you know, their career. And so for a minute, you know, I like to go through and get your guys' opinion on that. How do you feel about that how V.A.R.K influences that entire direction of learning to see that world differently? Do you agree with that, or do you not agree with that?
Well, I'd like to say something. My 12-year-old has already, he's interested in drones. There's a drone program, okay? And the professor called me this summer, and I mean, it's the next 6 years of his life have already been mapped out if he chooses that path.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'm cool about that. I'm not sure if at 12 years old, he already knows what high school now he's got to attend. You see what I'm saying? So I'm a little, I'm right in that thing right now. I'm there because as much as I want him to learn about drones, he actually came to me this summer and said, well, what do I do? If I become a drone pilot, what jobs are out there for me, you know, because he's interested in the math. He's interested in how they go. He doesn't even know what they do. Like, he doesn't even know what the application of a drone. I said, well, let's find out. So he's going to take the class. He's in it now. They just started this week and they haven't really done much, but in the next few weeks, I'm going to kind of watch his progress and see, because if he chooses that path, yeah, he'll have to go to a specific high school. So the next 6 years are planned out for us. That's pretty scary. At 12 years old, he doesn't even know what he's going to do tomorrow. Okay.
Mhm.
He doesn't even know what video game he's going to play in the next 5 minutes. I mean, that's
Right.
6 years. And now he's asking me, well, what kind of career, mommy? What kind of career does a drone pilot have? And I don't know. So we went from video game designer to YouTube star, YouTube, all that
Right.
stuff creates these, like YouTube's created new jobs. They
Mhm.
followed that little boy, Ryan, who's got toys in Target now. He's got a television show. Him and his parents have a TV show. They have followed this little boy's career. So we've created jobs. So my son, that's how he feels. He's like, well, I can create a job. So let me do the drones. Let me learn all about the technology. Let
Mhm.
me learn the back. He can become a pilot too. That's one program they have, but he doesn't have any interest in flying planes.
Mhm.
Okay. But he's going to learn. So yeah. So we're in that thing now where 6 years is already carved out if that's the
Mhm.
route we choose. But yet what happens in a year from now if he decides he wants to be a painter? I mean, which
Right.
is fine. Yeah, I think and one more thing too is my 9-year-old, I took him to school even this morning. There's a
Mhm.
Dali, Salvador Dali. They
Mhm.
have a Salvador Dali truck that goes to the
Right.
schools. And he went and he saw, I said, hey, have you been in the truck yet? Or, oh, I think our day is today, mommy. I think we're going to go
Mhm.
in the South. And I said, do you know who Salvador Dali is? And he's like, so he's going to learn about him today. And I think, and of course, we have the Dali Museum in St. Petersburg.
Of course.
It's like 5 minutes from my house. Okay. And I said, well, if you're interested in Salvador Dali, mommy was in Scotland. I saw a bunch of his paintings in Europe. I
Mhm.
said, we can go to the Dali. So, and he's interested and he's only 9. Like I said, he really just wants to throw football all the time. Okay. But I think that opening up this whole using this VARK method, I think I'm trying to introduce my children to a bunch of different methods. I don't want them completely on the computer and playing video games. No
Mhm.
offense to you guys, but I also want them to be open
Right.
to doing things and being out and being in the park and riding their bike. And
Yeah.
it's hard. It is a challenge. You got to know,
Oh,
Stephen, it's
I
a
know.
challenge to
I
be a
know.
parent. It's like, go out and get on your bike. Well, mommy, it's 96 degrees outside. There's a video game I want to play with my friend. It's hard. It's hard. Okay, there's a challenge.
That is a challenge. And I think that just a couple things to note there, adults like to box children into where they want to go with their career and they're 12 years old. It's
Yeah,
like,
I know.
or 13. I mean, my oldest one, he wanted to be a paleontologist for the longest time. Well, that's the most amazingly boring job I could possibly think of. But if you want to dig up dinosaur bones, that's awesome. That changed. Now he wanted to be, go into robotics, and that's what he's, be sort of focused on as he goes forward with, his career path. But the change, I just mentioned before we got on, that my 12-year-old, he just came to visit me, and I gave him an opportunity to say, do you want to go to the zoo? Do you want to go to the aquarium? And the Tampa Aquarium, no offense, Tampa, is not the most majestic aquarium in the world. And so, it was, he said, well, I'd rather go to the zoo, but he wants to be a marine biologist. Okay, well, where'd you get that idea in your mind that you at 12 years old, you want to be a marine biologist? Probably because of something that he heard in school,
Right,
and it got him
right,
interested, and that's great. But pigeonholing a child until they really know where they want to go, and even in college, I mean, how many kids changed their majors in
gosh, I
college?
changed mine 6 times. I don't even remember what I started as.
But
Right. Yeah.
it's good for you to explore the world
Yep.
in your own way, and to problem solve in your own way. The other part is, I have that same challenge. I don't have that same challenge completely that you have, but the bikes are normally lined up in the driveway. There's
Yeah,
kids
not
always running
mine.
from the
I'm
house that
working on
aren't
that. Yeah.
mine. We're locking down the pantry because they're stealing my food because they're always hungry, and so instead of 3 miles, I ended with a whole bunch of extra ones, which is fine.
Yep.
And it's good to see that there's, this rotation of kids that are doing other things besides playing, Xbox or whatever,
Yeah, we're
gaming
still
system we
working
have
on
at
that.
that
Yeah.
moment. But at the same time, they do take and have a good balance. And I know that that's an important, and I think that's what's really important about this learning process, is that it helps people find that level of balance that they don't know they need, or they don't know they have, or that helps with that self-discovery.
But I'm glad that you brought up the older ages, because some of my college students that are 28 to 30 something, they're in the same position. They have no idea what they want to do. A lot of my
Mhm.
students are in the hospitality industry. So they're working in bars or restaurants or hotels, and they still don't know what they want to do. I mean,
Mhm.
you know, they're 30, 32, and they're still being exposed to all kinds of new things. And still, something might come along that they want to do better. Right now, the job is
Right.
just a means to an end, where they thought they wanted to be a hotel
Mhm.
owner someday, and now they don't. So I'm taking all your time, Donna. I'm sorry. I like to, sorry. I'm talking too much again. Sorry.
That's okay.
No, I was enjoying it. I was totally enjoying it. I forgot the question.
Oh, we're just
That's
talking
okay.
about VARK and how career, you know, how does it work with career readiness? Because, you know, like we're saying, whether
Mhm.
the children are 12 or whether they're 30, there's still this you know, misconception that we've got to choose, what we're going to be in. And I mean, it took me, I was I was 30 years old, married in a horrible marriage, and I was working in a diner. Don't laugh, okay? I had a regular college degree, a really good college degree. I was working in a diner, one of those breakfast places. We call them a greasy spoon. You know what I'm talking about? So
Mhm.
I'm working, and I worked like 8 to 3. Then I went home and I took a nap. And then maybe I hit the bar. I mean, I was a
Mhm.
total loser at 30 years old. Don't laugh, okay? So one morning at the breakfast place, I waited on a couple, a husband and wife, and they were the parents of a friend of mine from high school. And they said, "Oh, hi, did you know what so and so's doing? She's in New Zealand on the set of the Lord of the Rings movies." And I went home and I said, "My life sucks." And I cried, and I went and enrolled in an MBA program the next day, and then within about 3 or 4 years was teaching full time. I
Mhm.
mean, I was at low. You want to talk low, but to find out that someone from high school was working on the Lord of the Rings movies, okay, our favorite movies of all times, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, and that was a big wake up call. So I don't want my kids to have that wake up call. I'd like that wake up call to come a lot earlier for them. So, right? Is that what we
Yeah.
want? I mean, that's the goal, I think, of you guys creating this platform for children and adults to kind of, like you said, get those energy flowing, those interests moving, so
Mhm.
they move towards. And then when they're in a job like me, I'm always late. Okay, I've been fired from many jobs for being late, but I'm a very creative person.
Mhm.
So it took me a long time to find jobs where people don't care if I'm late. They want my creativity. And
Right.
that took a long time. So, sorry.
I think that we look at each other, in the world, and we start comparing ourselves to other people, and that's a challenge. I think that trying to teach children that, and Richard and I have talked about this in depth at points, with the competitive nature, how the program works. When is it competitive? When is it about you? Yesterday was a great example. We talked about, the point system, and though we haven't completely, nailed down exactly how we want the point system to focus ourselves, but that it becomes a reinforcement of yourself, trying to be better for yourself, working harder for yourself, because everybody learns differently. Everyone learns at a different rate. They learn differently in style, how they retain information, how they read information, how they visualize that information. And so building out a point system said, this is standardized points. It's like standardized testing, which I can't stand. Um, saying, New York State, which is where my kids go to school, they have the regencies. I think that's one, personal opinion. I'm not an expert. Personally, think it's a horrible way of testing kids to get a validation of what the teachers are trying to provide for the students.
Right, right.
Having seeing if their quality of life is where it needs to be based upon what they've learned or retained and strive for themselves versus having them compare each other is a much better approach, but we're not there yet.
Right.
Do you think, with that said, that the V.A.R.K system could potentially give us the opportunity for us to look at ourselves and try not to compare with other people. I know that's a hard thing for human beings, not to compare with other people. We do it all the time. But try to get a student instruction saying, I want to better myself. I want to try to be better for myself, which I think is an important statement. I'm going to start with Donna with this one. What do you think about that statement?
First of all, I'd like to go back to, and then pull me back to your question, but going back to like 12-year-olds that are being put into a career path, as Greta was talking about. I would say, is that the parents or teachers, or is that actually the 12-year-olds having anxiety about that? So
good point.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the parents.
A lot of times when I'm working with spirited kids, or kids that are having behavioral challenges, it's more about the adults. It's like my work becomes working with the mom, working with the teacher, working with the dad, working with the teacher, about how they're showing up in this child's life and the pressures that they're putting on this child, and sort of how to build more resiliency in their children, because actually that's I think what we want in our children is this resiliency, like a resiliency to thrive, to sort of be sovereign beings, to be in their own power, to make their own choices, to get excited about what they're doing, have the skills to consciously communicate with. I see it with 4-year-olds can do it, and middle schoolers can do it, high schoolers can do it. They receive the skills to like self-regulate, the skills of composure, the skills of being able to set clear boundaries. I mean, it's critical. And an example of a 4-year-old that I'm working with is like, I told Jimmy that I wasn't done with that toy. May I have it back, please? I mean, those are critical skills, and they are skills. They are skills that we can teach. We haven't known in education how to teach those. I feel like a sort of trailblazer in that way, because I'm so passionate about teaching these sort of skills, because it builds resilient children. And in a world that's becoming more and more complex, the ability to be resilient, the ability to handle a difficult situation, the ability to persevere through something that's challenging, the ability to have a conversation that's challenging, those are the skills that make or break a successful child.
I think communication is there's a huge lack in communication currently in the current up and coming workforce. And I'm going to use a statement, we'll leave it to kindergarten, because I see that we're going to learn to share, we're going to get along, we're going to learn to talk in kindergarten. And then when do we learn that again? Maybe first grade a little bit. I struggle. And then again, it's a personal thing as a business owner with getting some of my staff to communicate, because they are a certain age group. And so in that aspect, that goes beyond that. Where do you learn that? Do the parents forgot to teach us communicate? Was it these things, the phones, that start to make us not learn to communicate? They Snapchat all day long. They can instant message everybody and talk that way, but they can't walk up to somebody and say, hey, you really may hurt my feelings. I really don't appreciate that. And I see that a lot when coaching soccer, how the team communicates outside of, our app. They have their own little bubbles. They don't necessarily sit and talk with each other. They do it through technology, and at least they're communicating that way. But it becomes very cumbersome because we forgot how to sit there and do eye-to-eye communication, and to, how do I put this? Feel like you're always going to step on someone's toes because you didn't say something quite the right way. we've become oversensitive to that. And so the adults have created this problem for children, not the children creating that for the adults, where the adults have now pigeonholed a bunch of terms.
Yep.
And now
Right.
kids feel like they can't communicate because they're worried about using the wrong word to describe how they feel, because they're worried that it's not the right word to use. And so there's a place for political correctness and there's not a place for it. You know, there's a place to know I'm going to express my feelings, and there's a time to not. And I think that that's missing in that part. I think, you know, with this VARK kind of testing, you know, to understand how you learn, it's one thing to understand how you learn. It's another thing for people to teach how you learn. And that's something that Richard and I have spoken again in a lot of depth, because once they've taken an assessment or they've been analyzed, you know, through some gaming techniques, you know, how we present that information and individualize that information is a very critical part of what we're trying to build here, because one student learns one way, no one learns the same way, you know. So now we have a task to create something for everybody that is customized to how they learn, but still produces the same result of them being tooled to do that specific career task that they want to go into, or that gets identified and as a suggestion. So,
but I don't think that's limited. That's not limited to four-year-old. That's not limited to, I see that in my adults. I love this V.A.R.K. I'm going to give this to some of my adult students. I'm thinking of giving them the assessment just for their own, I don't know, P's and Q's. We do Myers-Briggs, which is overrated, but we do that every once in a while. But I see that in adults. I see the miscommunication, like you said, not know. They'll come to class, their heads are in their laptops or their phones. They pay attention for the 1.5 hours and then they're gone. It's like there's no socialization. Of course, COVID has ruined a lot of that. But even prior to COVID, there's no in the hallway. Nobody's talking in the hallways, you know, like, you know, I mean, I'd like to see more of that in my class. I think I'm going to promote that more of this semester is some more communication, you know, talking about, because I teach management, so I can get away with it. I can get away with a little more. Yeah, I have a little more freedom.
So think of the industrial role of education, you know, as we talked about, like from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, we do reading class. And from, you know, 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, we do math class. And in that, I would say, like, in that industrialized way, you know, 100 years ago when public education came into being, it was to create factory workers during the Industrial Revolution. And it hasn't moved the needle very far from where it started. And that is, sit in your desk, you do your work, you turn it in, and don't you dare talk to your neighbor. You know, that's your paper, that's your test, that's your, you know, do your own work. And I work in a lot of public schools, and that's still what's happening. So how do I learn to collaborate with others? How do I learn to communicate? How do I learn to self-regulate when Greta says, you know, we're not doing it with purple markers, you're doing it with red markers? I don't even know what to do about that. Like, okay, I'm just not going to talk to her. We don't have an opportunity to even teach collaboration and, you know, these ways of communicating that are critical. Critical.
I think that that's a huge statement. I can see in the evolution of technology, this very quick evolution of technology. You know, my business has been running the same way we've run. Now people run businesses now after COVID. For 21 years now, I've had everyone work from home. It's the smartest thing I ever did. You know, everyone thought I was out of my mind. Well, thanks for catching up, folks. Here I am. So at the end of the day, what that did was it changed how people perceive business. It changed the world, where the world got real small, real fast. And people don't realize the social impact that they have and by the decisions they make now, you know, in business and on, you know, even socially online. But more importantly, with like drones, for example. We are slowly going to a place where our responsibility level is higher as human beings to not do the wrong thing, because at a stroke of a button, now we can do great damage to lots of stuff where it would require us to get on a plane, go to another country, mess some things up, whatever that was, or, get in your car, go over to, Jimmy's house and say, I don't like you. I can just sit behind my computer and go, or
Text
and
message.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a huge gap between the old way of learning and the new way of learning, because problem solving skills on the fly, when you're dealing with technology, understanding the complicated equations, whether they're math or non-math type of things, to solve challenges that occur in anything, are way more complicated than they ever were before. And I can only imagine if we would call this a light bulb and we're now going to an LED, down the future that we don't even know existed, that this specific moment is going to be even simpler than even the future children from like when we're grandparents or great grandparents. So there's a huge shift that needs to happen, in how we look at things, because we are setting ourselves up for great failure if we don't, or disservice to our children, if we don't change how we teach them how to do these skills. And I don't know when that is. I don't know when that's going to change. There is some things I see with my own kids, how the school teaches, but that doesn't mean that's an indicator yet, of true national educational, change in how to manage future career paths or future ways of thinking or future tooling for them to become adults. So, well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate, Greta, you being on today. Donna, of course, we always appreciate you being a part of our little party here. Please, if you want to take that assessment test for VARK, it is on our Digital Times in our article. It'll be repeated in our next article for VARK after our podcast next week. And please hit that subscribe button. Please write in the comments on YouTube or on our website. You can hit us and tell us your story on the Digital Times. You can tell us a comment on the podcast page. And we appreciate everybody and all the time they've taken. And thank you for everybody being here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefectureisp.com.